This is a story about a dude named Lane. He moved to the mainland and bought one place to stay. And then one day he went try to rent them out. And then he became one real investor man. Hey everybody, this is Lane with the Simple Passive Cashflow podcast. If you guys wanted to get some deal flow, go to my network tab on my website and sign up for the investor database. Run across some deals to you folks when I get them. Allows me to figure out what you guys are looking for, whether it's private money lend deals or bigger deals. We're starting the investor club. Also, if you guys have the time, please leave me a review on iTunes. It helps fight the 1-star negative reviews, and also share it with your friends. Today we have Mark Walker on the line. How you doing, Mark?
Doing great, Lane. Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Mark is a founder of Luxmana Investments, which focuses on residential and multifamily investments. And Mark quit his corporate job and is now a multifamily investor. Mark, tell us a little bit about business and how much simple passive cash flow you're doing today.
Today my business is made up about 22 rental properties here in the Denver, Colorado market. And then about a year ago, I expanded into the larger multifamily space, and I have a 64-unit property out in Irving, Texas. So it's Colorado and Texas are the primary markets that I participate in. I did escape the rat race back in January of 2015, and the goal that I had around that was to have 200% of my expenses. So I had the benefit of being a high-paid W-2 employee, so I didn't take the route of seeking to replace my entire W-2 income, at least not up front. But instead what I did is I set a passive income goal that was 200% of my monthly expenses, and that's what it looks like. So I've never looked back since escaping the rat race. I'm very happy to have my freedom and to be financially free.
So let us know how you started off doing this. Did you start with single families first and go into the multis?
I think for anybody that's played that game Cashflow, that was created by Robert Kiyosaki, if you're familiar with that, my journey resembles that. I started out doing small deals, and I gradually just started doing larger deals. So my very first investment was in 2004. I bought a duplex in South Denver, and I owned that for a year or two. I fully intended to 1031 exchange into another duplex, and instead I was kind of hit a roadblock. It was my greatest gaffe in real estate, which we can talk about, but I ended up sitting out for the next few years, which really turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It was in 2010 that I really started getting involved in networking for real estate again. And I met a general contractor. We decided to scrape a couple single family homes in a trendy part of Denver. And after we knocked down those homes, we built a 3-story duplex on each of the lots. And those obviously weren't passive cash flow deals, but it was in 2011 when the money started coming out from those deals that I started buying rental properties again. And that was a really exciting time. I built up a sizable portfolio here in Denver, and at that time too, the market was a lot different than what we hear it is today. There was a ton of inventory on the market. I was basically buying when nobody else was, so I was able to take advantage of that, and that benefited me a lot. And then in late 2013, I actually bought my very first apartment. It was a 12-unit apartment complex, and one thing led to another. I escaped the rat race in January of 2015, and then later on that same year, I bought a 64-unit apartment complex.
Back up to 2010, because that seems to be the Han Solo moment. What was your portfolio up to that point? Were you just buying passively, or?
Yeah, in 2010, I actually wasn't in anything. I had sat the prior, few years out. And so, yeah, there was a Han Solo moment back in like 2005, 2006 timeframe. I had mentioned I'd owned that duplex, and I sold that with the intent to invest it into another duplex in the Denver area. There was a company I discovered that had a really interesting business model. They were a builder. They built duplexes. They built an entire community full of duplexes that were really designed to be a rental product, and they sold each of those duplexes off to individual investors. They also had a property management division. They had an arm that was a 1031 intermediary. They also had another arm that specialized in non-owner occupied financing. It would have been a brilliant, wonderful business model if the people involved were honest. But that actually led to what I call my biggest gaffe in real estate, or my PhD in real estate, actually. Long story short, I ended up testifying to the grand jury and helped them get an indictment. And I was the second guy they put on the stand when they did the official trial. The guy that was the head honcho involved in that, he ended up getting over 130 years. It was the largest prison sentence ever given out in the state of Colorado for fraud. All is well that ends well. Fortunately, I did not invest any more than I could afford to lose, and there's definitely things that I do differently now as a result of that experience. But it probably was a blessing in disguise as well, because I really sat out the next few years. So I missed the crash, and that was a blessing in disguise. And I think it definitely changes me now. Today, I definitely trust but verify. I put more due diligence into the people that I do business with. I don't hesitate to do a background check if necessary, depending on what I'm looking to do with them and stuff like that. But again, all's well that ends well. There was some light at the end of that tunnel for sure.
Yeah, so I recently bought, a few years back, I bought a note, or I don't even know what it was. I didn't really know anything about anything back then. But I bought a note within my self-directed Roth IRA for about 40 grand. And it was a house out of Pennsylvania. And I guess the deal was that I was going to get 9% back. And then when they sell, they get 50-50, or I get 50 of the equity and they get 50% of it. They would operate it, they would manage it, they would do everything. Come to find out, the people were sort of crooks, and what I think what happened was they were just kind of keeping the portfolio afloat and just siphoning off whatever cash into doing whatever they wanted, and then just having the LLC go under, and they themselves are eating caviar back at home.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I do believe, I don't want to scare anybody, but I do believe that most people are honest, but it is definitely good to trust and verify. And that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. It sounds like maybe it was for you as well, but isn't it great? Well, I think we're both better off, now having learned that lesson early on.
So. Yeah, I think shortly after, a few months after, I started asking around about these characters, and, everybody said, yeah, stay away from them. It was a little too late at the time. But I guess what are some steps that you go through to verify people? I know you mentioned the credit report. How do you go about doing that?
Well, first of all, the places that I look for people makes a huge difference. First of all, I don't do business with anyone that I don't know, or that somebody that I already know doesn't have an experience, doesn't already have some kind of experience with them. I think that's important, and I think there's a benefit to that as well, because I'll tell you, as I've scaled my portfolio and I've grown as an investor and stuff like that, it's been the result of people that I've met or that have been referred to me along the way that have been able to help me. Investing is a team sport, so it is great to have partners and team up with people and leverage other people's resources and stuff like that. But I definitely look for those types of people from trusted people that I've already done business with. And then of course, yeah, you can do a background check. Anybody obviously that's honest and has nothing to hide is not at all going to have a problem with that. And that's something you can turn around and rather quickly, within a couple of days at most, running a background check on somebody.
Any website that you'd recommend?
There's a lot of them out there. I forget the name of, but they're all, I'd say probably around $40. You can, pay like for an annual type membership, or maybe that's per month, where, you can just run unlimited background checks. You subscribe, and there are a lot of them that you can just subscribe to for, a week or a month or whatever. And, it's going to cost you 40 or $50. It's not that bad. It's going to save you a lot of money in the long run if you're dealing with someone you haven't ever had any experience with.
You mentioned this is the burn the boats moment, that you quit your job Take us up to like the runway up to that point. You had the number in your head, but what else did you tie up loose ends before you finally took the leap?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something to keep in mind that, even if this is something you aspire to do, if you aspire to exit the rat race, this is a step that you can take right now in preparation for that. Like I said, I had set that passive income goal. I asked myself, what kind of lifestyle do I want to live? And I started living it right away. By doing that, I was able to quantify or size up that lifestyle, know exactly how much it was going to cost me. It was by doing that I was then able to say, okay, my goal is 2x that. And I knew what that exact dollar figure was. That is something that everyone can do right now, even while you're working. You can decide what kind of lifestyle you want to live, and you can start living it. And I just want to say too, I'm not cheap. I've never been cheap. My family and I we love experiences. That's what we're all about, is life experiences. And we went on a Disney World vacation in September. We stayed for 7 days at Disney World in 5-star accommodations. My wife went to Paris for 10 days in October. I just was in Whistler for 5 days, back in January, and skiing and stuff like that. So, I'm certainly not cheap. I just say, start living your lifestyle right now, and that you want to live. And then, the other thing that was happening during that time frame is I was just laser focused on leveraging that income that I had, and in investing it in cash flowing assets. I actually found a power broker. I call him a power broker because he was someone that is an investor himself. He's not just a real estate broker. So he's been in my shoes. He knew when I told him what I was looking for, what my acquisition criteria was, he understood it right away, and he knew exactly what to go off and do. And I was able to leverage his system, and his processes in finding these kinds of deals. And, I was able to, in a relatively short amount of time, acquire, several cash flowing assets. So, I found a power broker. I also developed a relationship with a portfolio lender. And a portfolio lender is someone that, will originate a loan, and then they keep that loan on their own balance sheet. They don't turn around and sell it on the secondary market. And the advantage to that is that they'll typically allow you to build a portfolio of rental properties, as opposed to capping you at 3 or 4 properties, which is what typical loan originators will do, because that's all that Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac will allow them to do, because they're turning around and selling those loans on the secondary market. So, I found a portfolio lender. That was a big deal as well. And then the third thing is that I think was really critical during that time frame was I found an awesome property manager. And I didn't find it on my first try. It was actually my second try that I found the awesome property manager. But they were huge for me as I was scaling my portfolio. They manage those properties so much better than I ever could if I tried to self-manage. I don't want to knock self-management. I think there's a lot of very successful people out there that self-manage, but I knew that was not for me from the very beginnings. I really relied on my property manager.
I agree with that too. A lot of people think that they do it the best, and they probably do, but that's not the point. The point is the passive income.
Yes, and I think too, if your desire is to scale, at a reasonable pace, there's better uses of your time than self-managing properties. But that's just my humble opinion.
I think a lot of times people think of it as an ego thing, that they have to make them feel that they're a part of the system. And that's a great way of filling your time.
That's very true.
Not being one of the big boys in investing quite yet, aka the accredited investor in the eyes of the SEC, it's tough to find good options for investing. But then I started investing in the American Homeowner Preservation Fund, or AHP Fund, which is crowdfunding the mortgage crisis in America. The fund collaborates with existing homeowners to keep them in their homes. It's a way to make great returns while feeling good about making a social impact. After investing myself in the fund, it was awesome when they approached me to become an advertiser of the company. You can start investing with as little as $100, and if you want the free Burn Zone book, please send me an email to lane@simplepassivecashflow.com.
Mark, what's your current 2-week experiment and 6-month project? Show us folks that you're working on things too.
2016, I finished up renovating the 64-unit property and got that property restabilized, and it's now on autopilot, right? So I would love to find another 50-plus unit multifamily deal, but to be completely honest, my top 2 goals for me personally in 2017 are around family and health. And I'm to the point where I know this probably sounds awful, but I don't really care if I make any more money. I don't want to make any less, but I don't really. I'm going into 2017. My goals are not around making more money or finding my next deal. It's all about authentic relationships, particularly with my family. Spending time with my 5-year-old daughter. This is a time that obviously isn't going to last forever. She's not going to be this age, she's only going to be this age once. So I'm really focused on that. And then obviously my health, eating well, exercising, things like that. But if I could find another deal, 50 or more units sometime in 2017, I think that'd definitely be icing on the cake. I definitely, as I think most investors, most successful investors do, at least in my opinion, they know their unique formula for value add. They know what a good acquisition looks like. When they run across one, they know what they can do with it. The outcome is, generally fairly predictable for them because they know their strengths, they know their weaknesses. They know what they can do with the property. And so when that next deal comes around, I will definitely jump on it. Most likely the outcome will be fairly predictable.
I mean, what you're describing is kind of the nirvana or the goal of any real estate investors to, once you've got enough passive income that you don't really have to work, your priorities start to change. I mean, I think in Forrest Gump, Forrest goes to the mailbox and Lieutenant Dan gives him that letter that says that Apple stock just blew up and now they don't have to worry about money anymore. I think Forrest Gump says, well, now we don't have to worry about money. We'll focus on other things now. Or he says, well, now we don't have to worry about that anymore. Check the box. What's the next thing?
Yeah, exactly. I love that scene as well in Forrest Gump. It's definitely, it definitely is nice being free. It's definitely something I don't take for granted, and by saying I don't take it for granted, I mean that what I'm filling the rest of my days with really is family and health focused. So that's what I'm focused on in 2017.
Right, and it's kind of like playing with house money because it's not like you really need to make a deal.
That's right. And it's good not to be desperate for a deal either, especially right now with the market as hot as it is. That is something that, I observe. There's a lot of people out there that I think are desperate to make a deal. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. I think when you look at any real estate deal, again, you have to know what your acquisition criteria is. And you have to stick to it. Don't ever get to a point where you feel so desperate that you start convincing yourself that something's a good deal when it's not. So know your acquisition criteria and stick to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like in the stock world, you got Warren Buffett. I mean, people say he's smart, but I mean, the guy just doesn't make any mistakes because he doesn't really take any risks. I mean, he just kind of sits and waits for that one company to come that's a no-brainer. He invests with them. That's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think Warren Buffett, I really admire him as well because you're right. He doesn't make very many mistakes. And I think, he is another great example of someone that, knows exactly what he's looking for. He knows what he can, he knows his own company's strengths and weaknesses really well. I think that when he finds a deal that matches his special sauce, he can, very quickly make a decision on it, and he can take that company and he can reposition it just like we reposition, real estate assets. He can reposition a company and, really come out on top for sure.
Right. He looks for companies that have good management already in place. He doesn't have to do anything. And a cornerstone on the market. I guess you and me are kind of the same way. We look for that Class C apartment that's just managed terribly or has some advantage that we can unlock, and that's the value add.
Absolutely.
What is your simple passive cash flow number today? And imagine you had 2 times that amount. Describe your ideal day, routine, and what projects you'd be working on.
Yeah, my number's $20,000 a month. If I had $40,000 a month, I'd say it's full retirement in Central America. At that point, I think it's really questionable why even just, stay where I'm at or even look for another deal, period, I think we'd homeschool my daughter, and I think we'd, find someplace nice and sunny on a beach somewhere in Central America for sure. We'd explore the world, even outside of Central America, and just live free and enjoy the sun.
I know a lot of people homeschool their kids who do this real estate stuff. It always seems to be a bunch of alternative philosophies. What's with Central America?
About a year ago, I started overseas living and stuff like that, and I ran across a publication called International Living, and I subscribed for a while. What I liked about what they did is that every year they do an index where they rank the top 10 places around the world to retire overseas. And I think places in Central America like Belize, Panama, I think Panama last year was number 1 on the list. Belize was maybe number 4. Costa Rica was in the top 5. I remember there was just a lot of places in Central or South America that, made the top 10. And so that just kind of turned me on to it. Now, by the way, too, I'll warn everybody, International Living spams a lot. So, if you're listening to this and you go check them out, just beware. They do spam you quite a bit, but they do have some great information out there for anybody that's intrigued about retiring or buying real estate overseas.
Yeah, it's funny that a lot of entrepreneurs live in San Diego, but then all their tech support and all the other people are living in Belize, Panama. I'm actually going to Panama next month to go check out the coffee farm there.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, you'll have to let me know how that goes. I've actually never been down there.
A lot of these people have drunk some wine and sat down on what they really want and go and do it. And they take that glass ceiling off of what they really wanted and really start creating their future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that, when they go down there and they start sipping the wine, doesn't take long to start envisioning it either.
Is something that you have recently thought about burning your cash on for a time savings or an improvement in quality of life?
If I wanted to do that, I'd probably go buy a Tesla P100D. I don't think that's officially out yet, but it's obviously incredibly impractical. I think it goes 0 to 60. I think the current spec is just under 2.3 seconds, which is pretty ridiculous. Like I said, it's pretty impractical. I don't know that I'd actually ever buy one, but since you asked the question and talk about burning cash, that'd be pretty awesome.
Tony Robbins identifies 2 large concepts that we're continually struggling to gain perfection at. If you died tomorrow and I were to email this to your kid a couple of decades later, what would you like them to hear?
The science of achievement, I always say never stop learning. Learning leads to action, and action leads to success. I think that, I heard someone say once too that they never lose. They either win or they learn. And I thought, that is just such an interesting philosophy, a way to reframe the possibility of taking risks or the possibility of, success versus failure. I think we should always just be learning, and I think we should be putting our learnings into action. And, I run into a lot of people that are interested in real estate investing, and they might even take the steps to listen to a podcast like this or read a book about it, but then they never take action. And it's because oftentimes they're afraid, they don't want to take the risks and stuff like that. But if you don't take action, you're never, ever going to realize success, So, I really just encourage people to, never stop learning. Learning leads to action, and action's what leads to success. On the art of fulfillment, how do you contribute back? I think there should always be a reason that we all have other than money for why we're doing something. I didn't just build a passive income portfolio because I wanted to live in a nice house or buy a fancy car or drive a Tesla P100D. I did it because I wanted to be financially free. I wanted to be able to spend more time with my family and and I wanted to positively impact other people as well. When I was a kid, I loved playing with Legos. I loved building things, I enjoy that today, and I'm able to do that with real estate. I'm able to give people a wonderful place to live. I'm able to improve communities, both that are apartment communities as well as, the larger community that apartment complex is part of. I take pride in that. At the same time, I'm able to benefit from that as well through passive income. I think you really have to, before you do anything, you really have to start with a reason other than just money for doing it.
So you mentioned your daughter's 5 years old. Have you ever considered this thing I call the Michael Jordan retirement, where, you've got the passive income. Maybe it's not your $20,000 a month or $40,000 a month yet, but have you ever thought about just calling it quits for 5 to 7 years while your kid actually likes you and then coming back?
Yeah, that thought has crossed my mind, but I haven't pursued that, 100% yet. Like I said, I've definitely taken steps this year to, focus on the family, but that's tempting. That really is very, very tempting. And I like how you teed that up too, like, while your daughter still likes you, because I think about that a lot. Boy, when she gets to be a teenager, I've just heard some horror stories. So maybe that's something I should definitely put a little more thought into.
That'd be a great time to spend analyzing deals at night.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything we missed, Mark? I want to get your contact information out there for people to get a hold of you. And then I understand that you got a free gift for folks.
If you want to learn a little bit more about me or perhaps read some of my blog posts and things like that, you can find me at www.luxmana.com. Luxmana is spelled LUXMANA.com. And if you go to /simple passive cash flow, I do have a free gift as a way of saying thank you for listening. I've written a guide. It's called 10 Not So Obvious Ways to Boost Your Multifamily Property NOI. And, I obviously dive much deeper into this, but one of the things that I love about multifamily investing is something called forced appreciation. Multifamily properties are valued based on their income. And so if I acquire a property, my objectives are pretty clear. I want to increase income and decrease expenses. And if I do that, then I'm actually able to force the appreciation of my property. I absolutely love that about multifamily. And that's what this paper is all about. And I also reveal some of the things I've learned along the way, some of the different ways to unlock that value. Luxmana.com /simple passive cash flow. Go check it out.
All right, Mark. Well, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lane. I really enjoyed the conversation.
This website offers very general information concerning real estate for investment purposes. Every investor situation is unique. Always seek the services of licensed third-party appraisers and inspectors to verify the value and condition of any property you intend to purchase. Use the services of professional title and escrow companies and licensed tax, investment, and or legal advisor before relying on any information contained herein. Information is not guaranteed, as in every investment there is risk. The content found here is just my opinion, and things change, and I reserve the right to change my mind. Above all else, do your own analysis and think for yourself, because in the end, you are the only person who is going to look out for your best interests.